welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into something really fascinating, where ancient religious prophecy seems to collide head-on with modern seismology.
It's a wild one.
Yeah, we've gathered a set of sources that present this truly remarkable claim. They're saying that a specific geological fault line in Jerusalem isn't just a natural feature.
Right. They're arguing it's a divinely pre-planned mechanism, something set up to fulfill a major end times prophecy.
That's it. Our material today is a really deep analysis of some specific biblical texts. We're talking primarily from the prophets Zechariah and Ezekiel.
And it's all about the physical location of the Messiah's return. The core argument, it's really built by stacking these things up. You start with the ancient scriptures, then you put this historical act of deterrence on top of that. And then, and this is the really surprising part, you layer on the results of a 1964 geological survey.
So the mission for us and for you is to really break down why the discovery of this fault line, this thing under the Mount of Olives, is being pushed as, definitive proof of the Bible's accuracy.
It's a compelling story. I mean, it's this interconnected narrative that goes from the specific geology of Jerusalem straight into the global geopolitical arena.
Okay, let's start with the geography then. Let's set the scene.
Perfect.
So, we are focused entirely on the area just east of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. We're talking about the Mount of Olives and the adjacent wall with the Eastern Gate.
Sometimes called the Golden Gate. Yeah.
Right. And this location is just absolutely central to everything the sources are claiming.
It is. The main passage that's really driving this whole expectation is from Zechariah 14, verses 3 through 5.
Okay.
And this text, it paints a very vivid picture of the end days where the Lord's feet will specifically stand upon the Mount of Olives, which, faces Jerusalem on the east.
Right.
But here's the key part. The prophecy states that when this happens, the mountain itself shall be split in two.
Split in two, like literally.
Literally. It describes half the mountain moving north, the other half moving south, creating this immense valley right in the middle.
So this is not a small earthquake. This is a cataclysmic physical reshaping of the entire mountain.
Yeah.
A massive new entryway.
Exactly. And that's where the Eastern Gate comes in. This is linked through the book of Ezekiel, chapter 43 specifically.
And what does that say?
Well, this is the source that mentions the narrator being brought to the outer gate of the sanctuary facing east. And the prophecy says this gate was shut.
Shut.
And it's prophesied to stay shut because the God of Israel has already entered through it.
Okay, now the sources bring up something interesting here, this idea of prophetic foreshortening. Can you break that down a bit for us?
Sure. Prophetic foreshortening is basically a lens. It's a way to describe how prophecy can sometimes merge two different events into one single frame.
So it's talking about two different times at once.
Kind of. In this context, the prophet is describing a future event, the Messiah's return, but he's describing it as if it's already happened. That's why the gate is shut, because the Lord has entered.
I see.
But for the future fulfillment, the physical gate has to be opened, or, broken open for the Messiah's return. And it's the very same gate that Jesus rode through on a donkey.
So we have these two prophetic requirements. The Mount of Olives has to split open, and the Eastern Gate, which is sealed, has to open to the east.
Mm-hmm.
And that setup brings us right to this first big historical attempt to stop the prophecy.
It really does. We jump forward now to the 16th century, specifically to the Ottoman Sultan Suleiman. The sources refer to him as an Islamist ruler.
And he conquered Jerusalem in 1517.
Right, and the source material is very clear on this. It says his actions were motivated purely by a desire to prevent this exact prophecy from coming true.
So he knew about it. He understood the significance of the Eastern Gate to Jewish prophecy.
Oh, absolutely. The sources argue he was totally aware that the Jewish Messiah was expected to return through this specific gate. So his response was, well, it was architectural.
What did he do?
He sealed it. He sealed off the entire East Gate completely with immense stones, huge rocks. And according to the sources, this was done explicitly so the prophecy can never get fulfilled.
He was trying to build a permanent block against the Messiah's entry.
A literal stone wall against prophecy. It's fascinating. And to make it even more of a deterrent, the area right in front of the sealed gate is now used as a Muslim cemetery.
Which adds that layer of ritual impurity, right?
Yeah.
Something to discourage a holy figure from passing through.
Exactly. So this whole historical context, it just sets a perfect stage for what comes next, which brings us all the way up to the 20th century.
And this is where the story takes that really dramatic turn. We're in 1964 now.
Mm-hmm.
And some developers, reportedly Jewish developers, were planning a huge tourism project. a massive hotel complex right on top of the Mount of Olives.
Which makes sense. Prime location. But for any big construction project like that, especially on a historic mountain, you have to do your homework. You need a geological survey.
You have to know what you're building on.
Exactly. You need to know if the ground is stable enough for a massive hotel. So they sent in the surveyors.
And they had no idea they were about to maybe confirm a 2,500-year-old prophecy. So what did the survey find?
This is the core of it. According to the source material, the survey found a massive east-to-west fault line, a fractal line.
Okay, but hold on.
But it's where it runs that matters. It runs directly from the highest point of the Mount of Olives, goes right underneath the mountain, and it ends precisely at the sealed eastern gate.
Wait, hold on. You're saying Zechariah's prophecy says the mountain splits in two, half north, half south.
Which would be an east-west split.
An east to west split.
Yeah.
And the geological survey finds an east to west fault line running from the peak of that exact mountain to that exact sealed gate.
That's the claim.
That is a stunning alignment.
It is. And this is the absolute crux of the source material's entire argument. They present this geological feature not as some random coincidence.
No, this is the proof.
This is the physical evidence that the prophecy's fulfillment is literally just waiting to happen.
But I have to ask, fault lines are not exactly rare, right? They're common geological features.
Yeah.
How do the sources justify saying this specific one is, pre-planned divine proof?
And that's the crucial step in their interpretation. They say the uniqueness is all in the alignment, the exact east to west direction, starting at the prophetic mountain, ending at the historically sealed gate. For the sources, this fracture is God's pre-planned natural mechanism.
A natural mechanism, so when it's activated, it would cause the mountain to split apart, just like Zechariah described. And at the same time, it would cause the wall that Suleiman built, the very thing meant to stop the prophecy, to just fall right down.
Exactly. The sources describe this whole interconnected setup, the prophecy, the historical action, the geology, as a perfect plan laid out by God.
Wow.
And the implication is huge, right? It moves the fulfillment out of the realm of the purely miraculous into something that could be a naturally occurring, albeit massive seismic event. It makes it a question of when, not if.
So this convergence, this geological proof, as they call it, becomes the anchor for everything else they talk about.
It's a foundation.
If this physical prophecy is demonstrably set up to be fulfilled, then all the other broader end times prophecies, they must also be taken as literal and imminent.
That's exactly it. The source material uses the certainty to launch into this really urgent call to action. It's a demand for vigilance against what they see as global forces trying to mislead and control humanity right now.
So let's get into those broader warnings. I mean, they're pretty diverse and strongly worded in the sources. One big area of focus is what the material calls Satan's false religions. And the critique is very specific.
Yeah, it's not general. They target other major Christian denominations pretty directly. For example, the sources are highly critical of Catholicism.
Oh, what crumbs.
They spend a lot of time on specific doctrines. A key one is transubstantiation, the belief that the bread and wine in the Eucharist literally become the body and blood of Christ.
And the sources reject that.
Completely. They argue it represents a repeated, unnecessary sacrifice that, in their view, detracts from Christ's single, finished sacrifice on the cross.
So it's about theological interpretation. But they're using the geology of the Mount of Olives to say our literal interpretation is the correct one.
That's the logic. They also go after Mormonism, for instance, based on its claim of having additional revelation, outside of the Bible. The argument is, if you accept the geological proof, you have to accept the Bible as the final, only authority.
Which makes any other religious texts immediately suspect.
Right. And then from these theological debates, the sources pivot to global geopolitics, framing current world conflicts as a prophetic stage setting.
And this leads into the identity of the Antichrist.
Yes. The material makes a direct connection between the biblical Antichrist figure and the Islamic end times figure known as the Al-Mahdi.
Okay, for our listeners, let's just clarify who the Al-Mahdi is in Islamic tradition.
Of course. The Al-Mahdi, which translates to the Guided One, is a messianic figure in Islam. He's expected to appear before the Day of Judgment to restore justice and equity to the world.
And the sources say he's the same person as the Antichrist.
They claim the descriptions are so similar that they must be the same individual. For example, the Al-Mahdi is often expected to rule for 7 years of great peace, and the sources frame this coming peace as actually a period of total destruction and deception.
And central to this figure's reign, whether it's the Antichrist or the Al-Mahdi, is control. Total control.
Yes. The sources claim that the global system needed to enforce the biblical mark of the beast isn't some future sci-fi thing. They say it's actively being built right now.
And this is where technology comes in.
Big time. The focus is on things like digital IDs, vaccine passports, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, and social credit scores. They frame all these things, which are often presented as being about safety or convenience.
As the infrastructure for absolute control. The claim is that this technology is basically conditioning the world to accept a system where every single transaction is regulated from the center.
And they have a very specific idea of what the final mark from the Book of Revelation will be.
And what is that?
The microchip. Specifically, subcutaneous chips, the kind that are already being used in places like Sweden, Germany, Belgium for payments and ID.
The kind you implant under the skin.
Exactly. They see that technology as the perfect tool for the final mark that will control all buying and selling. It would make it impossible to function outside of this new world system. The fact that the tech exists and that people are accepting it voluntarily, that's presented as the final stage before the prophecy is fulfilled.
So the message is incredibly urgent. This isn't just looking at history. It's a roadmap for what the sources see as the very near future.
It is. The core conclusion is really unambiguous. The discovery of the fault line, the sealing of the gate, it proves God has laid out a perfect plan that you can physically verify.
And that proof is presented as a divine command almost.
It's presented as a mandate to strengthen your faith, to obey Scripture literally, and to share this information as widely as you can. The explicit instruction is that people who are sleeping on it need to be awakened to the certainty of these events unfolding right now.
It's really a synthesis of geology, ancient texts, and emerging tech, all channeled into one very concentrated message of prophetic urgency.
It really is. It offers this single framework that tries to connect all these seemingly separate global events, from arguments about theology all the way to microchip technology, and tie them all back to one single physical spot in Jerusalem.
Okay, let's unpack this. If natural geology and history seem to align so precisely with specific ancient texts, and this is presented as a pre-planned stage for a massive world event, what other seemingly random or mundane elements of our physical world, whether they be in science, architecture, or even our daily technological habits, might also be pre-planned stages, waiting for a prophetic curtain call? That's a thought for you to carry into your day.